Your health is massively important, but are you thinking about it as a true competitive advantage in your business? Our guests will help you think about health and performance as a business owner in new and different ways. And he has an inspiring story just about how clarity of vision and commitment can get you through tough times. But first, Claudia, why don't you introduce our guest?
Yeah, today our guest is Justin Roethlingshoefer. He's the founder of Own It Coaching, a high-performance health consultancy that helps business leaders optimize energy. Through his personal experience in the NHL and his own transformative health journey, Justin developed a unique method that empowers clients to heal and thrive. With over 1,000 clients served and a growing global presence, his mission is to keep the tip of the spear sharp, enabling purpose-driven people to perform at their highest level.
It's a great episode. Justin has actually transformed how I think about leadership and high performance. So we're excited to bring it to you and see if it has the same effect on you. As you listen to this program, keep 3 questions in mind. First, like Justin, do you have what we call a kayak moment that brings you clarity? Or are you drifting in your purpose? Second, is your business leveraging your true strengths, or is it draining you and sapping you of energy? And third, risk isn't just on your balance sheet. What are you doing to ensure your own peak performance as you lead your business? So this is a great episode. Sit back and listen to our conversation with Justin Roethlingshoefer. Well, Justin, welcome to the program. Excited to have you. You know, I know your work because I've seen you present, and you've had a big impact on how I think about high performance, and certainly how a lot of the business owners I work with and associate with do. So excited to have you on the program. Welcome.
It's great to be here, Cannon, and it was great to be with you and the other members of the Vistage group up in Atlanta, and I'm excited to be able to share at least a little bit of information with your audience here.
Definitely. So, we'll get into kind of that high performance coaching that you do, and I know you've grown up as a high performance athlete yourself. But before we get into that, I'm just curious: did you always think of yourself as a founder and an entrepreneur?
So to be honest with you, I grew up, I never was able to put the word founder, entrepreneur, business owner on myself. I would have never chosen that label, but I always knew I was different. I always knew I thought differently. I always knew that I saw the world differently. I always knew that I problem solved differently. I always knew I was somebody who wanted to experiment with things. I always knew that I wanted to be somebody who went against the grain, did the uncommon thing. And to be honest with you, I was oftentimes punished for that as a kid, finding myself in detention, finding myself being told not to ask questions, being told just this is just the way it is, and just behave.
Were you kind of rebelling? Did you find yourself rebelling, or were you just not fitting?
No, it wasn't rebelling. It was, to be honest, just not fitting. Like when I would ask deeper questions in class, right up all the way through my master's degree and my doctoral research, and you name it. That's why I continued to pursue such advanced degrees, was because I never found the answers I was looking for. And I was like, there has to be a different way to do things. All the way down to when I was a young kid, having all this energy and yet being told, sit in a corner and listen or you're going to stay late. And I still remember my mom gave me a pen when I think I was like 10 years old. And I took the whole thing apart, trying to just figure out, like, how does this work? What does it actually look like? And if you went into my parents' office in our house, you'd find 50 pens that were dismantled, but yet never put back together. And so I've always had this curiosity of figuring out, how do things work? How can you make them more efficient? And how can you make them better? And that was just something that continued to be a innate trait that I've had from a very young age.
Yeah. So I'll say, in a way, you kind of backed into business then, right? You knew you were an independent thinker. You were curious about how things worked. And we'll get into the kind of the problem you ended up solving, but I guess business became your mechanism to solve that problem, but you weren't necessarily thinking, I want to go into business.
No, exactly. And that's why I think for so long in my career, I went down the route of the National Hockey League. What I knew I wanted to be is I wanted to be a professional hockey player.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to be growing up in Canada. And when I realized that my talent and work ethic and everything was only going to take me so far, it got me quite a ways, but not to the place of the National Hockey League. I
Right.
found a different way to get there was through health and performance
Yeah.
and really allowing myself to speak into the lives of those who needed to make sure that their bodies and their minds were at the level of which the play was going to be required of them. And so that really became my role. But even staking back to what we were talking about previously is even when I was in that role, I still found myself in a box. I still
Hmm.
found myself not being able to have a creative outlet, being a victim of the system.
Yeah.
And I hate putting myself in a victim seat. And so in order to take myself out of that place where I didn't feel constricted, I didn't feel restricted, I didn't feel held back, I needed to do something different, which was ultimately step into business. And that was, like you said, something that I kind of backed into unknowingly.
Yeah.
But I was very fortunate and blessed to have some really great mentors that made what was possible even accessible to me.
Well, fast forward kind of into founding the business that you have. I know you were observing the medical community give guidance on how to be a high performing athlete. What were the problems you were seeing, and maybe what were some of the bad habits that otherwise high performers were developing that were not letting them perform optimally?
Yeah, I mean, dating right back to when I was 8 years old, I just heard from God that like my mission was to keep tips of the spear sharp, to help redeem the health of the world. Like that was just something that I've always just had on my heart, and I picked the weight up of that. But little did I know that my life experience of never actually having my health, being something that I felt I was always chasing, from obesity to anorexia to depression to addiction to having my liver and kidney shut down to having precancerous ulcers in my stomach and colon, and being told I wouldn't see 35. These are all real life things that I had to go through. And the funny part is that everybody who treated me, every functional doc, every iridologist, every alternative healthcare practitioner I tried to go see, and even every traditional Medicare place I tried to go, never saw me or heard me as an individual. They only ever saw me as the symptom or the disease in which they were trying to treat. And what I think I realized very quick was that you're not treating a symptom, you're not treating a disease, you're treating a person. And when you can change the environment they're in, when you can change the experience of how they're experiencing life, the body was built to heal. The body was built to thrive. And we have to do as practitioners is we have to take people out of the environments that are ultimately causing the dysfunction. And when we do that, the body has the capability to heal. And so what I had seen from not just myself, but also working in the NHL and working in the NCAA, working with elite athletes, was that ultimately we were asking everybody to do the exact same thing and hoping that we were getting individualized outcomes. And I want to ask, why is it happening? And as we started to really ask these questions, newfound outcomes were happening with everybody that we were touching because we were doing it in a very personalized and preventative way.
Well, and I think even before you founded Own It Coaching, I think you were starting to build this practice, right? I mean, because you were building the health programs for NHL teams, right?
Yeah.
Professional players.
Yeah.
So you put it on different terms, focusing on the environment and a comprehensive health solution. So tell us a little bit of just what that solution is, and then we'll ask, how did you turn that into the business?
Yeah, so I always come back to being able to understand that our body has a language. There's 30 trillion cells that make each and every one of us up. Those cells turn over at least 2 to 300 million of them every 90 days. And so theoretically, at the end of a 5 year period, we could be a completely new cellular human being. If you're experiencing the worst health imaginable, if you change your environment, if you change the things that your cells need, and I'll get into those in a second,
Mm-hmm.
in 5 years, you could be experiencing life where you're thriving.
Wow.
We know that cells need four things. Number one is it needs oxygen. Number 2 is it needs nutrients. Number 3 is it needs the ability to remove toxins. And 4, the ability to combat stress. For oxygen, VO2 max. For nutrients, cellular deficiencies. For ability to regenerate and remove toxins, sleep quality. And number 4, which is the ability to combat stress, is heart rate variability. And so when we can understand these 4 languages in such a critical way, we can actually make hyper-personalized decisions based off the lifestyle habits and behaviors that we engage in daily, moving towards healing, moving towards this state of thriving, and moving towards this space of longevity where you are going to be able to feel better, more well.
Yeah. So you brought that point of view to the NHL, and you were able to see tangibly improvement over the course of 3 years for each athlete, or even faster?
Oh my gosh, no, we were seeing like the cool part about this was as we started to implement this process, you were seeing athletes in their first year go uninjured where they had been plagued with injuries for the previous 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years of their career. We were seeing athletes who would get sick 3 or 4 times a year, not get sick at all. And so you start to see the healing process expedited. You start to see the energy sustainability throughout the course of a season be maintained. You start to see the performance outcomes that athletes are often looking for and teams are often looking for be realized. And it's not because we just happened to do it, but it's because there was a very individualized process that we were going through that allowed these athletes to feel, taste, and experience it.
Let's fast forward then to building the business. How did you realize there was a business opportunity here?
A very divine intervention. It was the year 2019, and for the first time in my life since I had stepped into the NHL, I felt like I was running uphill backwards. And it wasn't until I was in Chicago, we had just played the Blackhawks, and I sat up in my bed like it was like a bolt of lightning. And I just heard God say to me, why don't you do the same thing to yourself that you're doing for your athletes?
Yeah.
And so I started to look at my own data. And it was that moment that I realized that what I'm doing in the league, what I was doing there for these athletes, it was not an athlete issue. This is a human issue. There was about a year of trying to figure out, okay, how does this actually work? What does it actually look like? What are the systems, processes, and sequencing? The reason that I chose to dive into the business owners, the entrepreneurs, the executives, because those are the people who are committed to executing on a purpose. They've been put here for a purpose. They've been put here for a reason. And they often feel like they have to trade their health for their purpose.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And if we can ultimately help maintain their health, if we can help restore and redeem their health, they can go and have that much more impact, that much more influence, and that much more purpose-driven missions that execute on their God-given calling. And so that's why we focused on this community, because I want to work with a committed person.
Yeah.
I don't want somebody who, hey, I want to lose 20 pounds to look better in my jeans and blah, blah, blah. No, I want somebody who is a tip of the spear person, somebody who is committed to making the world a better place, somebody who is committed to having influence and impact on people, because that's what we were here to do, was serve. And so I want to serve those people who have given up their health to serve others.
Wow.
And that's why we chose that audience.
So you set it up perfectly. Tell us that story then on that first year that was a struggle, right? Because it was COVID, right?
Yeah, it was a hard year for me just because I didn't know how to start a business. Like I didn't know how to create systems. Remember, I was a creative that had ideas, that had an understanding of how something did something, but I was not a systems guy. I was not an organizational guy. And so being able to take all of what I had done in the NHL, from the cellular testing, DNA, epigenetic testing, heart rate variability tracking, sleep monitoring, like all of these things that in a closed environment is very easy to do. But when you have somebody that doesn't understand what these things are, how do you get them to buy in? How do you get them to follow suit? How do you get them to change their habits when you're 50 miles, 100 miles, a whole country away? Like how does that work? While at the same time, going back to like 2020, 2021, this preventative health thing still was not like something that a lot of people talked about. They didn't know a lot of this. So it was, number one, how do you get the value of what we're doing across to people that don't understand it? And then number two is how do you create the systems and the deployment process to make sure that it's a great client customer experience, like where it is just so seamless and so easy and so impactful that it resonates with them. And so that year was a lot of test and guess, a lot of testing and guessing, a lot of failure, a lot of rejection. And I still remember it was July and I was ready to throw in the towel. I was like, this has been like 8 months. I'm not working. I'm not doing anything. I feel like I'm off mission. I feel like I'm off purpose. And my wife looked at me and she said, Justin, just go be with God and sit in the kayak. I said, I don't need to sit in the kayak. I need to figure this out. And she goes, go sit in the kayak. And so I reluctantly, and again, for everybody listening, your wife always knows best. I grabbed my kayak, I pulled it out, and I sat in the water and I paddled for about 3 seconds, and then I just floated. And I remember seeing, it was almost like this glass sheet in front of me, and there was a little bullet hole that kind of like just gleamed light spewing through it. And instead of picking up my phone like I usually do, I almost leaned in and I was like, what is this? Like, what am I trying to learn here, understand? And it was like, as soon as I leaned in, the glass shattered, it fell, and I had downloads like I'd never experienced before. It was like clarity like I'd never experienced before. And I started to write in my note section, and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote. I copied, I pasted it into an email, sent it to myself, went inside about 2.5 hours later, sunburnt, dehydrated, sat down at my computer, put it into a Word doc, printed it off. It was about 20 pages deep, and it was the Own It Manifesto of what we built the company on. And
Wow.
I think that was just such a transformative moment for me because I slammed it down on the table and I said, Elise, I think I've got it. And she read it and she goes, this is incredible. Where did this come from? And I said, this is just a download from God because this is what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And that was the start of kind of where we went.
I've heard so many examples where, a founder of a business goes into a bunker and like just downloads in some form, and it's usually writing, right? Almost stream of consciousness in a very intense, short period. And that's what you went through as well there, I guess. I almost get the sense it was culminating up to that moment. You're about to burst with either confusion, frustration, rejection, but that commitment, internal commitment, and intense focus on getting it on paper kind of got you over the hump. And maybe that inspiration too, and being in the kayak, as you said.
100%. I mean, I go back to it. Like if it was one of those, there's so many moments in our lives where we have like left or right turn moments. And that was a left or right turn moment for me where it's like, hey, I'm going to do something different. But took the right turn and ultimately leaned into this. 2
questions. What were the first hire or two to the team? And 2, how are you funding it to get off the track?
So when I tell you that like there's just an anointing and a blessing upon what we're doing, my wife watched this journey. And my wife at the time was the executive vice president of Christian Louboutin, the fashion shoe company.
Yeah.
And she watched me go through this journey. And very quickly in the first 3 months of the business, I think I got 15 clients and I was swamped. It was just me. And so I was the guy packaging up the testing kits and sending them out with the books and getting on all the calls and onboarding everybody and doing all of these things. And remember, systems and processes are not my thing.
Right.
And so it would take me so long to do this. And I ended up getting a business coach, and the business coach said, you need to put all these systems in place. And I was like, I don't know how to run a calendar. Like, you're telling me to do these systems. I don't get it. And so my wife came to me, and it was a Saturday morning, and she was drinking her coffee out on the lanai, and she said, hey, Justin, can I talk to you for a second? I was like, sure. She was like, I've been feeling for a long time just unfulfilled in my job. I just want to give some people like not a moment of happiness and joy, but a lifetime. And I'm seeing what you're building, and I'm just called to it. Would you be interested if I came on and took over as like the CEO? I was like, my God, what a blessing. Like, yes, get me out of this seat and put somebody in who knows how to do what they do the best. And so when I say the first hire, it was kind of like a cheat because my wife came in and took over as CEO, started putting the processes in place, started putting these different things in place. And then our next hire was our first coach. We had built a medical board of functional medicine docs that sat at the top, that did all custom formulations and helped with guidance of client protocols. But then it was a registered dietitian and strength and conditioning coach that we first brought on that was handling everything that I was doing. And so what that did was that allowed me to gain time back so that I could lead them better, so that I could again continue to cast a vision, speak on stages, write books, things that I'm passionate about, do content, do podcasts, educate people. Because at my core, I'm a researcher, I'm a educator, I'm a teacher, I'm a coach. Like that's just who I am. And by being able to be in that seat and lead people, allowed people who really want to go deep and build those deep, intimate relationships with our clients to create the change and give them the attention they need and deserve, is what we needed to try to replicate. And so that really became our focus over the next year.
Were any missteps or early things that you said, oh, I would do differently knowing what I know now, or did it actually work perfectly?
No, I mean, if I said it worked perfectly, I'd be lying.
Yeah.
If anything, that way, it works that way. So number one is something that my wife and I talk about often is we focus so heavily on client experience, client journey, and client outcomes. Those are the three things that we put all of our money back into. How do we make sure that the client journey is excellent? How do we make sure that the client experience is excellent? How do we make sure that the client outcomes are excellent? And because we put so much time into our systems and our processes that Elise was really driving, we were able to see and run our business, even before we were $1 million business, like a $100 million business. Like it was so well ticked and tied. We had consultants come in and go, how big are you guys? We're like 750,000. No, 750. That's it?
Yeah.
Because we were so well tied in terms of how all of our systems, processes, reporting, everything was done. But the big mistake we made was not having a marketing funnel, not having a way to reach people in place. And the only way for us to do that was through me getting on stages, me getting on podcasts, me doing things of this nature, which requires me to be on the road. And for the first 3 years of our business, I've spoken on over 500 stages.
Wow. Yeah.
If you do the math on that, that's about 175 every year. You do the math on that, that means you're on the road for about half the year, every single year. And so it became exhausting. It became like a real grind. But in doing so, it allowed us to this year, and this is just something we're celebrating, is we will take on our 1,000th client this year.
Congratulations. That's awesome. Yeah.
And this year is our theme for the year for our business. We do this every single year. We've always had a theme, and the theme for this year is tell the story.
Yeah.
Tell the story.
Awesome.
Tell the story of our clients. Tell the story of the successes.
Those client testimonials are just, I'm sure they're wonderful for you to hear personally, but they're also gold for the business, right? I'm just curious, funding for the startup is always a challenge. How did you do it?
To be honest with you, Ken, this is just, again, my wife and I sit here sometimes in awe because my first client funded the first thing that we did.
Yeah.
And everything that we took in from clientele has just continued to be reinvested into the business, even to this day. Continue to be reinvested, continue to be reinvested, and nothing turned into an 8-figure company. And like, what a blessing that is to be able to sit in this. And I think Ed Milet told me something that I just have never forgotten. And he goes, "You want to stand out in this world? Just be excellent at what you do." Making sure that every single thing we do with excellence. Every single interaction we have with a client is excellent. Every single journey they have is excellent. Every single outcome is excellent.
You're reinvesting profits, but you're never spending in advance of opening a market or something like that.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, we're always reinvesting the profits of what we've been given.
Yeah. Well, so let's just spend just a minute as we kind of move to wrap. Do you think about ultimately where you want this to be and what the end games looks like, or is it too early for that?
I know that our purpose here on earth my purpose here on earth is to keep tip of the spear sharp, is to help redeem the health of the world, and the continual innovation. And my commitment to the people who have trusted us with their health is that It's to take Own It to be a global name in health, in preventative health and proactive health optimization. And
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, that's what we're called to be. We are called to be the light in a world that is really full of darkness when it comes to your health,
Mm-hmm.
and not really understanding where to go. We want to be a beacon of hope for people who feel hopeless in this area. What we've put in place over the last year was we've got 3 health houses, one in Canada, 2 in the United States, that we now give our clients access to, where they can go and actually experience what a true health environment looks like. We built our house here in Miami to be a haven for health, where we host different retreats, different events. And so going back to what I said at the very beginning, when you change your environment, you give your body the chance to heal. And so I don't want to hold people back. I don't want people to work less. I don't want people to feel like they have to derail from their mission of where they're trying to go. I want to empower them to feel better, to have more energy, so they can multiply their impact. They can multiply their influence. They can multiply their purpose. But it requires you living differently. And that's what we help you do, so you can heal from the inside out.
Well, last question. Does age really matter?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I say to my clients all the time, my goal is that you die young at an old age.
Yeah.
And when we think about it, I truly believe age is just a number. You've got this concept of a birth age. And a lot of people, when they come in, their birth age is actually younger than their biological age, their cellular age. And so you've got somebody who comes in at 40 years old, but really the way their body's operating is at 60.
Yeah.
And they feel like absolute garbage, where all of a sudden, just a year later, at 41 years old, their biological cellular age is that of a 35-year-old. And so you feel so much better. And so when you ask that question, it comes back to age is just a number. It's all about what is your environment that you're putting yourself in, and is it accelerating the speed of aging?
How can people learn more about Own It Coaching and about your approach?
Yeah, they go to ownitcoaching.com. Just ownitcoaching.com is a great place to understand everything that we have going on. And then I'm super active on Instagram at Justin, ROETH, just at Justin Roth.
Awesome.
And I answer everything there. So either of those 2 places are the best places to go.
That's awesome. Well, thanks for joining the program today. Thanks for sharing your thoughts. Just as you said, very original. So thanks for helping us all be our better selves.
This is great, Cannon. I appreciate you.
All right. Welcome back to the studio. Cannon and Claudia with you here. So 2 things here in this episode. One is peak performance, and second is clarity of vision. And all underneath that is how health and your energy contribute to both of those successfully. So it's such a great, innovative program. We'll highlight 3 quick takeaways on it. But first, I thought I'd point out, Claudia, that was interesting to me. The work we do in financial planning was very similar to how Justin thinks about managing your health and how he delivers his health services. It's very individualized. It's very customized. It's data-driven. It's not built on averages, and it's rooted in your values and what's important to you. And that's the same way we design financial planning around for our clients. So I just thought that was a cool similarity there.
Yeah.
But before we get into the takeaways, what was your impression of this episode?
I mean, I really enjoyed this episode. Personally, I am a huge NHL fan, big hockey fan. So hearing about his experience trying to make it in the NHL, being a trainer in the NHL, and how it translated into him ultimately growing his own business based off of what he had learned was really, really cool to me. So that was definitely my favorite part.
It's cool. I know you and your family love the NHL.
Yes.
So I knew this would resonate with you. It's a cool story. All right. Well, the first takeaway is really about Justin's own journey to clarity. And he had decades of frustration. And there was one thing that brought it together in terms of clarity, and it was that kayak moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I loved this moment because, as you mentioned in the episode, every entrepreneur kind of has this like lightning burst of ideas and clarity. And he talks about his wife forcing him out onto the kayak. He didn't want to go. But as he points out, your wife is always right. And that, he goes out there, he's on the kayak, and he just gets all this clarity about his business and how he should be proceeding. And I think that was a really cool moment.
Well, and what was cool, he went from technician to entrepreneur in that moment, which is cool.
Yep.
And then secondly, just kind of the A+ effort here, he called it a manifesto. He wrote it down. And this is what we encourage all entrepreneurs to do in our 3 R's playbook. Take the time to write down what your vision is, what your plan is, and we've got resources there on canon-car.com, which will take you all through that process. But write it down. It creates focus, it creates momentum, and it'll be your own kayak moment. So I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
The second takeaway here is around the concept that passion doesn't scale, but process does. Justin was never short of passion, but he spent, decades wearing a lot of hats, trying to bring this passion to making his business happen, but it was inefficient. It wasn't working well. And he learned process was important. Mm-hmm. And what did he do about it?
Yeah, he hired his wife, which again, great idea. She was an executive, I believe, at Louis Vuitton, and her skills translated perfectly and filled the gap of what he needed so that he could focus on the passion and building the business while she worked on the business and making sure everything looked right.
Yeah, she was a proven CEO, right? And so he had the clarity of vision to now say, all right, so my strengths are things like being a creative thinker, a deep researcher, an educator, and a storyteller. But I'm not a process guy. I'm not somebody who's going to build a business for scale. And he looked for skills there, and his wife filled those weaknesses that he had. So it's a beautiful example of putting that in place. And what's interesting too is when you hire that kind of a player, you want to listen to them, right? Mm-hmm. Don't get in their way, right, because they're addressing your weaknesses. So have the courage to follow through with the talents of that person. The third thing I'd point out is just this concept of risk. In two ways, how this episode uncovers that. So the first one is Justin's own concept of risk. In oversimplifying things, businesses, you can either use profits to grow slowly and steadily, or you can use other people's money to go unprofitable and scale for growth quickly. Those are two very different risk profiles of business, and you want to be comfortable with whichever one you choose. And sometimes some entrepreneurs end up doing a little bit of both, but here, Justin was able to, sensitive to how he was comfortable with managing growth, grow steady, grow slow.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he talks about how he ended up on 500 stages in 3 years, speaking to crowds, trying to grow his business and preach what he believes in. And, it reminds me of our episode with Melissa Bunnan, who's the founder of Piece of Cake, and how she did the same thing. She started out in her kitchen and scaled slowly as she had the money to. And so, you can definitely do that. And it's a successful path for a lot of entrepreneurs.
Right. It's profits along the way where you're reinvesting from profit, and each new customer comes from a prior customer's profit. And so it's a beautiful, steady way to grow, and it matches the risk profile Justin was comfortable with. Secondly, Justin challenges us to think differently about risk because most people think about risk in terms of market risk or operational risk, but not health risk. And he argues that founders often sacrifice their health to make the business work. Gosh, that can be exhausting, that can be draining, and actually it can really be destructive. So think about health in terms of risk in that regard and how you become a high performer, because if you're a high performer, that allows the business to grow and scale around you and your team to trust you, right, and everything else follows. Mm-hmm. So I just thought that was very cool. So to wrap up on those 3 points, again, some of this you can find on canon-car.com, which talks about the 3 R's framework, and each of these concepts about your narrative or your manifesto. We have resources there that can help you think about that. We have resources that help you think about risk. So sit back, go to that website and enjoy that. Just as we wrap, Justin reminds us that sustainability, clarity, excellence, they don't come from working harder. They come from working smarter, right, and healthier. So thanks for listening in on this episode.